What does Christian Community Church believe? Here we go. Essential number 3. Man was created in the image of God, but has sinned and fallen from his relationship with God. All human beings are born with a sinful nature and freedom of choice, and those that reach the age of accountability become sinners in thought and deed. Though not the most obvious place to begin a discussion about the awareness of sin, the uniquely Christian doctrine of the Trinity, as always, provides the best lens through which to view human sinfulness. Because the Trinity is the very ground of all being, and because the ground of being is, by nature, perfect communion, community, unity, humanity's awareness of missing the mark of relational perfection is perhaps our most pervasive sense of failing. God created humanity in an unfallen condition. His exact plans regarding every stage of realizing a perfect future creation are a mystery. Concerning the idea of the image of God in which humans are created, a combination of the structural and dynamic views is compelling. The structural notion of the image of God, belonging to every human being, simply by virtue of creation, can coexist with portions of the dynamic view, the final image being a higher and more glorious one than the first. And this glory will belong entirely to God. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, Romans 3:23. It is best not to think of sin in the ways it tends to be bandied about by modern society. To sin simply means to have missed the mark, something most people, Christian or otherwise, readily admit to doing nearly every day. If this is the definition, why do we struggle with this term? Because there is often shame, comparison, condemnation, and human judgment associated with the user's motive when people weaponize the term against one another. But to do this is to invite the kind of judgment by which we are judging others. All of humanity is equal in two primary ways. First, all are made in the image of God, and second, all are fallen. The paradox is this: Christ died for men precisely because men are not worth dying for, to make them worth it. That's C.S. Lewis. Sin as a principle leads humans to set themselves up as the judges of all matters: morality, value, logic, pleasure, etc. George MacDonald says, "For the one principle of hell is, I am my own. I am my own king and my own subject. I am the center from which go out my thoughts. I am the object and end of my thoughts. Back upon me, as the alpha and omega of life, my thoughts return. My own glory is and ought to be my chief care. My ambition to gather the regards of men to the one center, myself. My pleasure is my pleasure. My kingdom is as many as I can bring to acknowledge my greatness over them. My judgment is the faultless rule of things. My right is what I desire." Again, the one principle of hell, according to George MacDonald. Søren Kierkegaard says the means through which we are drawn to God are many, and all converge at the consciousness or the awareness of sin. Being drawn to God is congruent with the purpose for which humanity was created: fellowship and community, such as exists within the Trinity. And yet, according to Kierkegaard, this communion between a fallen creation and the divine lies on the other side of an awareness of sin, an awareness which began with Moses and which Christ illuminated and expanded upon in the Sermon on the Mount. Taking the notion of missing the mark as a simple definition for sin, this concept can be seen to thread throughout different doctrines. The doctrine of humanity in sin highlights the individual's misguided faith in themselves as judge, king, and subject. This is the state of all humanity, afflicted to varying practical degrees, but equal in its state of fallenness. The brokenness of humanity manifests in many ways, but it is perhaps most obvious in our hindered relationships. Whether in regard to storge, philia, or eros, a diabolical lack of intimacy has marred fallen human relationships. George MacDonald characterizes the inordinance in his Unspoken sermons when he says, "My pleasure is my pleasure." Selfishness, missing the mark, sin, has deadened the expression of the divine image in human love. Whereas divine love empties itself for the beloved, and in doing so receives an infinite surplus of love in return, fallen love seeks to fill itself up, and in doing so remains perpetually empty. This missing of the mark leaves humanity cold and needy, but the beauty of divine love beckons at all times. Through Scripture, yes, but more so through humans who have been immersed in Scripture. At God's pleasure, the practice of the Trinitarian doctrine may break through as the eternal answer to humanity's desire for true intimacy. Not only is the life and teaching of Christ an expression of perfect community, his admonition to love one's enemies is a description of the culmination of creation. That's Matthew 5:45. This is anything but the hopelessness of an impossible ideal. Rather, it is the placement of ultimate being in a future orientation. This kind of love is a shadow of the future kingdom breaking through into the present moment. While congruent with humanity's noblest imaginations, the practicality of loving one's enemies can seem foolish to many. A modern example of both the awareness of sin and the interaction of the future kingdom with sinful practice can be seen in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech at Illinois Wesleyan University in 1966. He said, "And so he can rise to the point of being able to look into the face of his most violent opponent and say in substance, 'Do to us what you will, and we will still love you. Send your hooded perpetrators and violence into our communities at the midnight hours and drag us out on some wayside road and beat us and leave us half dead, and we will still love you. But be assured that we will wear you down by our capacity to suffer. And one day we will win our freedom, but we will not only win freedom for ourselves, we will so appeal to your heart and your conscience that we will win you in the process." This is Dr. King functioning according to Barth's theory on the doctrine of self-revelation. King's faith in the power of community constitutes a memory of eternity, a notion of love which exceeds human reason, which must issue forth from a place outside of our time. Pannenberg's future orientation provides this location. Dr. King also seems to be echoing Christ's capacity to suffer and his final victory of reconciliation.